Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining me. I have the most honor to present to you about the workforce development and education field. First and foremost, my name is Felix Quason. I am at the Ohio State University in Columbus, Ohio, and also at the College of Education and Human Ecology. So you have heard a lot about workforce development through your radio programs, through your TV, through the news, through your podcasts. And it's usually a terminology that is often used by government officials, policymakers, employers, businesses, educators, and researchers. So the terminology has generated thousands of research studies at the local, state, and federal and international levels. So the terminology was originally used by the United States government as an approach to provide shorthand job training effort to assist workers who had become unemployed and needed to be reemployed during the war on poverty activities crisis in the 1960s, and also during the oil crisis in the 1970s. So the terminology gained popularity at the federal level, the workforce development terminology gained popularity at the federal level through the Economic Opportunity Act of 1964. And I believe the president at that time was President Lyndon Johnson, who signed the Economic Opportunity Act of 1964. So defining workforce development, you will say, I still can't get my hands on workforce development. What does it mean? So workforce development can mean two different things: matching you with a job, education, and training for careers. So matching with a job, education, and careers. So at the end of the day, workforce is about education and careers and matching you with a job. So what are the theoretical assumptions of workforce that people have? And you will hear, how are you supposed to do that? Robots are taking over the workforce. Companies are moving offshores to different countries, different countries according, different companies giving them incentives to move their headquarters to their countries. What does it mean for workforce development? Everything that's going on, what does it mean for workforce development? And also different problems arises in different decades. And also we have the automation problems that people theorize that it will eliminate the workforce, or it will eliminate the right for people to work in the economy. So collaboration among three sectors or branches within workforce development. The first one, we have the business and industry, which is the human capital. And we have the regional development, which is the strength of community economy. We also have the training institution component, and increasingly training institutions are more geared toward schools, agencies that prepare students for career readiness, prepare youth and adults for career readiness, through the 16 career and technical education clusters, which we will talk about. We will also talk about the Perkins V, how the career and technical education came about. So what are the 16 career and technical educations, right? So we have the health sciences, we have business and management and administration, we have marketing and sales, finance, information technology, science, technology, engineering, and math, which is the STEM field. We have manufacturing, we have transportation, distribution, logistics, hospitality and tourism, government and public administration. We have law, public safety, corrections, and security. We have agriculture, food, and natural resources. We have human services. We have architecture and construction. We have education and training. And we have arts, audio, visual technology, and communication. And the good thing about these 16 career and technical education clusters is that it can lead to 79 other high demand careers. So which is pretty cool if you think about it. So what are the legislations of career and technical education? So first, vocational education was first funded by Congress through the Smith-Hughes Act of 1917. And thereafter, vocational education was referred to as career and technical education in the Vocational Act of 1973. And also we had the Carr-D-Perkins Act, which the first Perkins 1 was first enacted by Congress in 1984. The second one was in 1990. The third one, the Perkins 3, or the third Perkins, was in 1998, and 2006 was the the fourth Perkins, and then we are now in the era of Perkins V, which is the fifth one that was enacted in July of 2018. So let me help you note something here. The reason why the federal government tried to move the idea of vocational education to career and technical education was to destigmatize the notion that people had about vocational education, right? That it was for the students that weren't doing so good academically, right? So the federal government decided to destigmatize the notion of vocational education to career and technical education to have people become more interested to pursue trade skills and career skills. So what businesses want in local economy? So before any business or company move to a regional economy or to a new city, they will ask several things. They will ask the regional workforce board several questions, and these are some of the questions. These are some of the main ones that they will ask. They will ask the workforce development board of that region. They want to know if residents have the skills they need to fill their jobs. Businesses want to know how schools and training organizations or training institutions are teaching and training students to meet workforce demands. For example, technician skilled workforce. They want to know if the students are being trained in critical thinking, innovative ideas. They're being trained the technician skills for them to be able to fill that job demand within that regional city. So schools are now changing the way they teach to make sure the students, go out there to meet the demands of the workforce. And the way that you're teaching students to meet the demand of the workforce, the technician skill force, is through the career and technical education program of study, the assisting career clusters in career and technical education, adult ed, and work-based programs. So workforce attention at the federal level. Workforce gained popularity, like I mentioned earlier, at the federal level during the war on poverty activities, which was the 1960s. So the early to mid 1960s, we had the orientation towards civil rights and race and justice. And then poverty was rampant in America due to unemployment and people that needed to be reemployed. And also the oil crisis in the 1970s, brought a lot of changes, economical changes here to our nation's economic structures. And also we began to become more of global competition. And also through the mid to late 80s and the early 90s, we saw the orientation of federal policies towards the demand of businesses and industry, where the federal policies wanted to meet the demands of human capital needs of businesses and ensuring that those who needed to be reemployed and those who were unemployed were successfully retrained and placed in the economy. So originally, workforce development was a term that was used by the United States government to fund activities for disadvantaged people that were unemployed and needed to be reemployed. So it provided remedial job training and education for them. And so the way it worked was that the local organization will receive state or federal funding to train people for jobs. But there are problems with the original method of workforce development. Throughout the 1960s, the 80s, and the early 90s. So training organizations were rarely checking with the businesses and industry to see if there will be any demand for the new workers they were trying to supply. And then the people that were unemployed when they were trained, they weren't getting hired, and nobody really wants to go to a job training program that does not lead to a job or demand for the skills in the economy, right? So the bigger piece that was missing in the early method of workforce development at the federal level was the big collaboration question, right? So the workforce method began to change in the 1990s with the collaboration to bridge already existing conversations about workforce. The conversations were mainly between business and industry, regional development communities, and training organizations. So that big conversation was all for all of them to come to one table and have one big conversations about workforce development. So globalization and the race for talent. The United States, since the fall of the Berlin Wall, the US has become a global competition, right? We are a global competitor. And in the age of the global competition, it's all about race for talent and for businesses. And so different companies are courting, different countries are courting different companies, giving them incentives to move their headquarters, um, giving them tax breaks, subsidies, you name it all, to bring their business to that country that are courting them. Businesses want to know what about the local workforce, what the local workforce board or training institutions are teaching students and adults, so that they know that they have the right skills to fill the jobs that they need to fill now and also in the future. And also companies, like I mentioned earlier, companies are being courted by different nations, states, and given incentives, tax breaks to relocate the headquarters, labor union issues, and also the right to assemble the union has also become an issue in different states throughout workforce development. So for example, we can look at the Wisconsin Foxconn deal of $3 billion in tax subsidies, the bid for Amazon headquarters 2, and the backlash it received over, for example, in New York City, and also the Kansas City Council approved a $4.3 billion deal for Cerner campus plan. So these are all part of the coordinated incentives that states, countries, cities are giving to companies for them to be interested in their local workforce or regional communities. So what are the trends in modern day workforce, right? So over the last decades, we all know workforce has been a conversation that has been moved or beyond our head of remedial job training and education for adults. So the conversation has now entered into the classroom at every level, K to 12, secondary, post-secondary, adult education. And now it is more about collaboration and conversation between business and industry, regional communities, and training organizations. Now, some of the questions that you will ask moving forward with the trends that's currently happening in the field will be, should businesses be influenced in the classroom? And if so, if you agree that business should be influenced in the classroom, how much of the influence is too much to accept, right? And are training organizations training students and adults about critical thinking, about technician skills, about upskilling skills, innovative ideas, and exploring career in the 16 career and technical education clusters? Are training organizations supplying local businesses with the skilled workforce they need? So these are some of the questions that will help us advance the workforce development field forward. And if you have any questions, I am happy to answer all of them. Thank you, and thank you for listening to this presentation.